Can't be asking me that question, man. Come on, man. We can't see that's like the thing. Like, if we want to change, the narrative, change the franchise, if we want to like help, we gotta speak life. You can't. Those type of things is like separate us. Like a lot of the players like get these type of questions, and then we want to be working with y'all. We want to be proactive.
Tommy Reese just dropped a bombshell that exposes the Browns' multi-million-dollar agenda against Shedeur Sanders and what the offensive coordinator revealed about focusing on the process instead of results, while admitting the results haven't always been what we've wanted, confirms they're deliberately holding Shedeur back from his full potential. Reese praised Shedeur's decision-making against Buffalo, saying he processed information and came to his answers on time, explained how Buffalo's elite pass defense dictates where the ball goes, which forced checkdowns, and revealed the team had moments where the flow is right, but keeps coming up with field goals instead of touchdowns, basically admitting they're sabotaging scoring opportunities. But here's the kicker. Reese talked about wanting Shedeur to understand the why behind plays while simultaneously admitting they won't put expectations on him for his last 2 games, which sounds like they're setting him up to fail so they can justify drafting another quarterback with all that draft capital they're hoarding.
Like, if we want to change, the narrative, change the franchise, if we want to like help, we got to speak life. You can't. Those type of things is like separate us. Like a lot of the players like get these type of questions, and then we want to be working with y'all. We want to be proactive, but like when you ask questions or when questions are asked to us players, and it's like you pinning stuff against each other, it's like, come on now, you know? It's like a thing in the locker room.
Yo, so let me break down what Tommy Reese just accidentally exposed in this press conference, because when you really listen to what he's saying, and more importantly, what he's not saying, you start to see the entire Browns' agenda against Shedeur Sanders laid out in plain sight. Tommy Reese held this press conference after the Buffalo game, and on the surface, it sounds like he's praising Shedeur. He's talking about decision-making, about processing information, about being efficient. All good things, right? But when you dig deeper into his specific word choices, when you analyze what he's really saying, you realize he just confirmed the multi-million-dollar agenda to keep Shedeur Sanders from showing his true potential. Let's start with the most damning admission Reese made, because this is where the whole thing unravels. A reporter asked about Shedeur's low average depth of target against Buffalo. Basically, why wasn't Shedeur throwing the ball downfield like he's known for? Why so many checkdowns? And here's what Tommy Reese said. Buffalo was first or second in the league in early down passing, first or second in the league in pass defense. They play a lot of too-high coverage. They keep things top down by design, so you're going to have to pick your spots to get the ball down the field. They play a coverage where they dictate where the ball goes. Now, on the surface, that sounds like good coaching analysis. Buffalo has a great pass defense, they take away the deep ball, so you take what they give you underneath. But here's what Reese is actually admitting. The Browns' offensive game plan was designed to let Buffalo's defense dictate what Shedeur could do. They went into the game saying, we're going to let the defense tell us where we can throw. That's not aggressive offensive coaching, that's passive offensive coaching. That's basically saying, we're not going to challenge their weaknesses, we're just going to take whatever scraps they give us. And you know what the result was? Exactly what you'd expect when you play scared. Field goals instead of touchdowns, drives that stall in the red zone, moments where the flow is right, but they can't capitalize. Reese even admitted this later in the press conference. He said, there's been moments where you feel like the flow is right where it wants to be, and there's sometimes series after series it feels that way, and you come up with a field goal instead of a touchdown. Read that again. Series after series where the offense is flowing, where everything feels right, and they come up with field goals instead of touchdowns. That's not bad luck. That's not Shedeur's fault. That's coaching. That's play calling. That's an offensive coordinator who's more concerned with process than results. And that brings me to the most revealing quote from this entire press conference, the one that exposes the real agenda. A reporter asked Tommy Reese how he navigates the ebbs and flows, the progression and regression from a rookie, And here's what Reese said. Your focus is so much on their development. Your focus is so much on the process of getting the best out of them every day. You really don't go through the emotional roller coaster. You just focus on the process. You don't focus on the result as much as, all right, are our eyes in the right spot? Are we doing the things that we've been coached to do? And if you're doing that, then you're on the right direction, which our guys have done for us. You know, the results haven't always been what we've wanted, but we really try to focus as much on the process as we do on the end result. The results haven't always been what we've wanted, but we focus on the process.
I would say each step been the most helpful for me, because a lot of different perspectives, you know, it's a lot of different viewpoints and different aspects of life, you know, and I feel like everything, you know, you gotta go through, you know, every moment you gotta live through, and each of those are building blocks to help you throughout whatever situation you're in, and help you be thankful also.
Sure. What happened with the finger, and what was that whole episode like for you?
I don't know. You can look online and see what my finger looked like if you want. I'm sure they got the details on there.
There it is. That's the admission. They don't care about wins and losses. They don't care about Shedeur's stats. They don't care about developing him into a franchise quarterback who can win games. They care about the process. They care about checking boxes. They care about being able to say, well, we developed him the right way, even if the results are terrible. And you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like an organization that's already decided Shedeur isn't the answer, so they're going through the motions of developing him while actually setting him up to fail so they can justify moving on. Because think about it, if you really believed Shedeur was your franchise quarterback, if you really thought he could be the guy, would you design game plans that let the defense dictate where the ball goes? Would you focus on process over results? Would you be content with field goals instead of touchdowns? Hell no. You'd be aggressive. You'd be attacking defenses. You'd be designing plays to highlight your quarterback's strengths, not hiding them behind checkdowns and conservative play calling. But that's not what the Browns are doing, and Tommy Reese just admitted it. Now, let me address the praise that Reese gave Shedeur, because it's important to understand how he praised him and what that reveals. Reese said Shedeur's decision-making against Buffalo was a great example of improvement. He said Shedeur processed information and came to his answers on time, which allowed us to be efficient. Efficient. There's that word again. Not explosive, not dynamic, not game-changing. Efficient. That's the Browns' entire philosophy with Shedeur summed up in one word. Be efficient. Take what the defense gives you. Don't make mistakes. Manage the game. That's not how you develop a franchise quarterback. That's how you develop a game manager. And you know what happens to game managers in the NFL? They get replaced. They get blamed when the team doesn't win. They get labeled as not the guy, even though they did everything the coaching staff asked them to do. That's the trap the Browns are setting for Shedeur. Do exactly what we tell you, be efficient, focus on the process, and when we still don't win games, when we still settle for field goals instead of touchdowns, it'll be your fault because you're not talented enough to overcome our conservative coaching.
I did everything, you know, to come back because I didn't want to put like Dylan in a bad situation, you know, like since when I was a 2, and like, it's tough. It's tough to play that role because you don't get reps, you don't get anything. And I was talking to him. I said, bro, my bad, bro, for putting you in that situation, you know, because it's not ideal. And I want, you know, him to be prepared whenever he was out there, you know. So that's really how all that went.
Did it bug you in the second half at all with the bandage on it?
At that point, like, I just had to accept fate. I just accepted, like, okay, this what it is. I can't think about it. I can't.
Now let me show you how Reese's comments about Shedeur's last 2 games expose the agenda even further. A reporter asked, he's only got 2 games left, so what are the next steps you would like to see him take specifically against the Steelers? And Reese responded, I just think continue on the right progression that he's on right now. Continue to make good decisions. Continue to focus on the areas that we're asking him to do. Find ways to move the football. Find ways to score points. That's the quarterback's job. But to put expectations and put those on him, we're just looking for good progression and making sure that each week there's improvement. to put expectations on him. Let that phrase marinate for a second. Shedeur has 2 games left to show he's the franchise quarterback, 2 games to prove he deserves to be the starter next year, 2 games to make his case that the Browns shouldn't draft another quarterback with all their picks, and the offensive coordinator says they're not going to put expectations on him? Why not? If you believe he's the guy, if you think he has franchise quarterback potential, shouldn't you want to see him rise to high expectations? Shouldn't you want to challenge him in these final 2 games? But instead, Reese is lowering the bar. We're just looking for good progression. Make sure each week there's improvement. That's setting Shedeur up to be evaluated on the lowest possible standard, so that no matter what he does, the Browns can say, well, he showed improvement, but we still need to explore other options in the draft. It's the perfect setup. Don't put expectations on him, don't challenge him, don't give him aggressive game plans, and then when he plays it safe and the team settles for field goals, you can point to the lack of production and say, see, we need to upgrade at quarterback. That's not development, that's sabotage. And the most frustrating part, Reese actually admitted that Shedeur has the talent to do more. When talking about Shedeur's decision-making improvement, Reese said, I think Sunday was a great example of it, of finding opportunities to let the play out against the defense that's called by them. So much of the quarterback position is solving the problem and having the answer quickly, and you saw him process that information and come to his answers on time. So Shedeur can process information quickly. He can solve problems. He can make good decisions on time.
If you're in a world of pleasing people, you'll never be happy, so I'm thankful that I was able to prove to myself, that I'm able to play on time, I'm able to step up in the pocket, like I'm able to do that. Like, you got to speak life into yourself, because if you look external for that, it's not going to happen,
But instead of building on that, instead of opening up the playbook and letting him attack defenses, the Browns are keeping him in this conservative box where he's efficient but never explosive. Reese even revealed that there were specific moments in previous games where the offense was humming, where everything felt right. He mentioned the opening drive against Detroit, a long drive against the Jets, the start of the second half against Minnesota, moments where you just feel like the rhythm's there, the guys are moving and operating the way we've asked them to. But those were just moments, isolated sequences in otherwise mediocre offensive performances. And you know why they can't sustain that rhythm? Because the moment something goes wrong, the moment a drive stalls, the Browns go conservative again. They stop attacking. They start playing not to lose instead of playing to win. Reese admitted this when he said, sometimes series after series it feels that way, and you come up with a field goal instead of a touchdown. We just want to look at our process, and in those critical moments want to execute at the highest level. Execute at the highest level in critical moments. But how can you execute at the highest level when your offensive coordinator designs game plans that let the defense dictate where the ball goes? When your philosophy is process over results? When you refuse to put expectations on your quarterback? You can't, and that's exactly the point. The Browns are creating an environment where Shedeur can't succeed at the level he's capable of, and then they're going to use that lack of explosive success, but instead of building on that, instead of opening up the playbook and letting him attack defenses, the Browns are keeping him in this conservative box where he's efficient but never explosive. Reese even revealed that there were specific moments in previous games where the offense was humming, where everything felt right. He mentioned the opening drive against Detroit, a long drive against the Jets, the start of the second half against Minnesota, moments where you just feel like the rhythm's there, the guys are moving and operating the way we've asked them to. But those were just moments, isolated sequences in otherwise mediocre offensive performances. And you know why they can't sustain that rhythm? Because the moment something goes wrong, the moment a drive stalls, the Browns go conservative again. They stop attacking. They start playing not to lose instead of playing to win. Reese admitted this when he said, "Sometimes, series after series, it feels that way, and you come up with a field goal instead of a touchdown. We just want to look at our process, and in those critical moments, want to execute at the highest level." Execute at the highest level in critical moments. But how can you execute at the highest level when your offensive coordinator designs game plans that let the defense dictate where the ball goes? When your philosophy is process over results, when you refuse to put expectations on your quarterback? You can't, and that's exactly the point. The Browns are creating an environment where Shedeur can't succeed at the level he's capable of, and then they're going to use that lack of explosive success as justification to move on from him. Now, let me defend Shedeur through all of this, because despite the conservative coaching, despite the agenda, despite being handcuffed by this offensive philosophy, you know what Shedeur is still doing? He's improving, week by week, game by game. Even Tommy Reese had to admit it. When asked about Shedeur's decision-making improvement over his 5 starts, Reese said, "Sunday was a great example of finding opportunities to let the play out, solving the problem and having the answer quickly. You saw him process that information and come to his answers on time, which allowed us to be efficient." So despite being limited to checkdowns, despite facing Buffalo's elite pass defense, despite having an offensive coordinator who focuses on process over results, Shedeur still processed information quickly, made good decisions, and executed the game plan perfectly. That's impressive. That shows growth. That shows he's doing everything they're asking him to do. Reese also admitted that Shedeur handled Buffalo's defense exactly how they wanted. "I thought his decision-making in those moments was really good and what you want. We had the 1-Q that got us down to the 4-yard line, gain of 16 when you check it down. We had another one on 2nd and 8 that got us 9 and a first down. Those are plays that keep you on schedule." So Shedeur made the right reads. He took what the defense gave him, he kept drives alive, he executed the game plan perfectly. But the team still only managed field goals in critical moments. The offense still stalled in the red zone. They still couldn't capitalize on those moments where the flow is right. And that's not on Shedeur. That's on the coaching. That's on the conservative play calling. That's on an offensive philosophy that prioritizes not making mistakes over making explosive plays. Even Reese admitted the offense has had rhythm in isolated moments throughout the season, but they can't sustain it. Why? Because the moment they get into a critical situation, they abandon what's working and go conservative. That's coaching failure, not player failure. And yet, when the Browns evaluate Shedeur at the end of the season, when they decide whether to draft another quarterback with their multiple first-round picks, they're going to point to the lack of explosive offensive performances and say we need an upgrade. They're going to ignore that Shedeur did everything they asked. They're going to ignore that he improved week by week. They're going to ignore that he made good decisions, processed information quickly, and executed the game plan.